Hi, welcome to episode 359 of The Corner of Knit and Tea. My name is Laura. I'm also known as Fluffy Kira on Instagram and Twitter. I blog over at thecornerofknitandtea.com, and that's where this episode and every episode show notes will be. I also have an Etsy shop in which I sell my hand-spun yarns and hand-knit patterns. Hi, how are you? It is Monday, January 3rd. Happy New Year! I hope that your New Year is off to a great start. My Monday has been a little rough. I have a little bit of a nagging headache, and I am getting back into the new year and working after a wonderful long weekend off. So a little slow to start, but I'm trying to get back at things. I have so much crafty goodness to share with you. Last week was a light week at work. I took lots of time off to craft and I finished a bunch of things. Some of which I didn't even really talk about with you. So I have tons to show you. I am inspired to cast on new things for the new year. I hope that you enjoyed your holidays. I know they can be a little bit stressful for everyone. I hope you were able to find a few days to yourself and sort of prepare for the new year. I always feel like I could use another week before the new year starts, because after Christmas, I feel like I can wind down and relax for a week or so, and then of course we start on the hamster wheel again. So I wish you all good things for 2022. May you all be healthy and happy and have wonderful crafting going on. So let's get right into it. Today I am drinking the last cup of the cappuccino mix that I bought in November, and I am enjoying it, but I am also ready to go back to a lot of tea. I'm drinking it today in my Oy Vey all day mug, which seems appropriate for the Monday after a few weeks of holidays and light working and getting back into things. So that's delicious and keeping me going through a few more afternoon activities. It's about 2:30 in the afternoon here. I'm coming to you from just outside of Kansas City, which is in the Midwest, United States. And the weather today is chilly. We dropped temperatures a couple days ago. We spent a couple days in the single digits and barely the double digits. And then today we're back up towards the 20s and 30s. We got a little bit of snow, although most of it has melted today, but it is just chilly. And so I am staying warm in my woolens and spending a lot of time crafting. So let's talk about what I finished. The first thing that I finished is I finished a wrap that I was working on that is a sample for Zen Yarn Gardens. And this is the Courage Shawl by Shannon Cook, who is so very Shannon. And this is a 3-color worsted weight shawl. The original was knit in Kelburn Woolens Germantown in 2 colorways. One was, I believe, a natural and one was a navy. And then they used a spin cycle yarn I'm not sure what their worsted weight yarn is, whatever that is, to do sort of some color changing throughout the shawl. For Zen, we adapted it to Zen Yarn Gardens bases. Again, this is a sample and will be available as a project kit shortly. We used the Serenity worsted, which is a merino cashmere nylon blend in natural, and then we used the Nightshade worsted, which is a blend. It is super fine merino. One of the plies is black, so everything takes on kind of a marled state. One of the colors was Midnight, which is pure black, and one was called Chuffed. And actually, I still have those with me. So here is the white, and you can tell I wound this one by hand. This is the white, the Serenity base in the natural, and then I have the marled base in Chuffed. This is the multicolor. It's kind of like a splatter dye, but you can see the marl in there. And then I also have a little bit of the black left. So, and that is the marled base, but it's dyed Midnight, so you couldn't tell. So those were my 3 colors. I broke into the 3rd skein of each, although I only used a significant amount of the black one. The pattern calls for a certain number of repeats. If this were not a sample that I am doing for them to test kind of where the yardage is, I probably just would have continued repeating until I ran out of yarn. or couldn't do any more pattern repeats based on what I had left. But let's show you what it is. The Courage Shawl is a 3-color mosaic knit shawl. So all of the fun patterns are done in mosaic stitch, which is slip stitch knitting. So you're only knitting with 1 color per row every row, and some rows you are skipping or slipping certain stitches to create these patterns. So as I said, it kind of goes throughout the pattern, and you can see that the pattern has some repeats, and it has created a really nice worsted weight shawl. It is approximately my wingspan, maybe a little bit more. I am 5'3". I believe it called to be about 63 inches. So actually almost perfectly. It's a little bit more than that. And it is kind of heavier weight and cozy. For a long time, I only knit a lot of fingering weight shawls, and lately I have really grown to love worsted and DK and bulky weight shawls just for their extra warmth on chilly days. They do feel like a lot when you're knitting them. I mean, this shawl probably has between 700 and 800 yards in it. Possibly a little bit more than that. So, you know, it is almost the weight of a sweater for some of us. So, but it is just nice and warm and cozy. So that is finished. I actually knit this one in about 8 days. That's what having a lot of time off over the Christmas holidays will do. I started it on the day before Christmas Eve on the way to my mother-in-law's, and I finished it on I basically knit it Thursday to Thursday. So I finished it Thursday, the day before New Year's Eve, and then blocked it so that I could show it to you today. The ends are woven in and it is ready to go. I have another sample to finish before I send this batch off to the photographers, and I will be sharing that with you in a few minutes as I talk about my new cast-ons. But that is, again, the Courage Shawl by Shannon Cook, so very Shannon. It's a forthcoming kit from Zen Yarn Garden. So the next thing that I worked on was a work in progress when I saw you last, and that is my Christmas socks. I went ahead and participated in Little Bobbin's Knits, the Christmas Eve cast on. She started this 4 or 5 years ago. She always casts on a special project on Christmas Eve, and I have taken to doing so. Often it is Christmas socks, even though it seems a little silly casting on Christmas socks on Christmas Eve. I often find that December is such a quick month that it's just with all the gift knitting or samples or work that I'm trying to finish up before the holidays, I often find that I don't get to the pair of Christmas socks that I very much meant to knit. So I save it for my Christmas Eve cast on. I work on it on Christmas Eve, finish it up early in January, and then the socks are ready to wear whenever I want, and definitely for next year. I finished the first sock. This is, I am using David Schultz's Toe Up Sock recipe, or sock cookbook. It is basically a recipe to calculate how to knit some toe-up socks with a gusset and heel flap if you are working with hand-spun yarn. So you measure your foot and you measure your gauge and you use his formula, and then you know precisely what you are to knit, and then it gives you the instructions to knit them. So not a hard pattern, just a very little bit of math and calculation. You can do it with a calculator if you need to. And so I have finished the first of my socks. You might notice it is a quite tall sock. Generally, I don't prefer knitting socks toe up. However, when it is hand spun, I often knit them toe up so I can knit them as long as I want. I never want to waste any of my precious hand spun. That said, I did actually finish these socks a little bit before I had run out of the ball of hand spun, because I just decided that they were long enough. These are definitely mid-calf socks, not quite to knee socks, but they were getting up there, and I just decided I'd like to start on the second one. So I finished these in this gorgeous kind of ready pinky section, and I have started, although I have not put much work into the second sock. I have, I believe, just the toe, and let me find the ball. I had about this much left of the first ball, so I'm actually going to start there and then go into the next ball where I broke it, so that I can have one final ball left of just a little bit whatever's left over. So as you can see, I have done the toe. I believe I am finished with all my increases, and so now I just need to knit the foot and move on. This is definitely a project project for this week. Probably I have quite a few Zoom calls and meetings this week to start the year off, so this will probably be my constant companion as far as that goes. And I would love to finish this by the time I speak to you next. I will have to see how the week goes. I don't see any reason why I should not be able to, but that's what I would like to do because I have another sock pattern that I need to get to this month. So that is my half finished Christmas socks, and I will be finishing those up. I have a whole nother ball here, so I will be finishing those up, and then I'll probably have a little bit of this left over, and I don't know precisely what I will do with it, although I have been thinking about maybe knitting a gnome from Sarah Shearer's Imagine Landscapes. She does all the wonderful gnome knit-alongs, and I have been thinking about knitting one of her holiday gnomes, and maybe I'll use some leftover handspun for that. So I'm excited about that and hope to have a finished object, a fully finished object, to show you next week. For now, again, it's just the half, and I am absolutely in love with these socks. I can't wait to wear them. So that is sock number 1. Again, David Schultz's Toe Up sock recipe. I'm knitting these on US 1s. And my guess is I probably had about 300 yards of this, of maybe a heavy fingering or light sport weight. So the next project on my needles is something that I didn't talk about last week. I may have alluded to it. I know I said I was thinking about doing a challenge for myself, and I can't remember if I told you what that was. For those of you who have been following my Instagram for the last few days, the challenge was to knit myself a bulky weight sweater over the New Year's weekend. I took Friday, New Year's Eve off work, and so I wanted to challenge myself to knit a whole bulky sweater on New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, and the day after New Year's Day, January 2nd, and finish it. And the first day I worked, well, okay, let's talk about a few things. Number 1, I decided that I was going to re-knit Carbeth by Kate Davies. I originally knit this pattern about 2.5 years ago, and actually I was knitting this pattern at the time that Kate Davies did some problematic things on Instagram. And at the time that I was knitting it, I had already purchased the sweater pattern. I had already started knitting the sweater, and I decided to finish the sweater with an admonishment to myself to be more careful about the patterns that I select in the future and who I supported. So I loved that sweater. I wore it a lot. The yarn that I knit it out of was some inexpensive Cloudborne yarn, which was from when Craftsy was Blueprint. So after it was Craftsy, it was Blueprint, now it's back to Craftsy. In the in-between times, Blueprint sold a variety of yarns, one of which was Cloudborne, which was kind of their house yarn, and I bought the Cloudborne and made a few projects with it, and in general, it did not wear well and became very, very pilly. So I really enjoyed actually wearing that sweater. It was a nice shape, it was very comfortable, but I didn't enjoy the way it wore. So I did a lot of thinking about whether I would reknit the pattern, and ultimately I decided that even though I was not happy with the way Kate dealt with things on Instagram and Twitter and in her group back at the time, I still already owned the pattern and I enjoyed the sweater, and so I decided to go ahead and re-knit it because it had been somewhat of a staple in my wardrobe. So I have wrestled with that because, first of all, I would say I'm not generally one of those people who separates the art from the artist. I also dislike being a hypocrite and saying that I'm not going to do things and then doing them. And I finally got to a point, I did look for other sweater patterns, but I just finally got to a point where I decided that I was not giving additional money to this designer, and that I wanted to go ahead and remake an item in my wardrobe that I found useful. So, and you may disagree with me on that, and that is fine. I just sort of wanted to give the background and context for why I seem to be changing my mind from what I said previously. So, I had decided that I wanted to, this is something that I've actually been thinking about for the last few months. And I had sort of decided that I wanted to give Carbeth another go back around Thanksgiving. And when Eat Sleep Knit had their Black Friday sale, I went ahead and purchased yarn to re-knit the sweater. And the yarn that I purchased is Malabrigo Mecha. It is a bulky weight, although it is slightly lighter weight than the yarn that I used before. The weight that I used before was approximately 100 yards, 110 yards to 100 grams, and Mecha is 130 yards to 100 grams. So it's slightly lighter, and so I dropped a needle size on the pattern, and then I actually got gauge. So the colorway that I chose is Ojos, which is this really, really gorgeous green. It is a kind of a foresty green, and then it has yellow-green bits, and then some almost tealy bits, and then it seems like it has been overwashed sort of with black or kind of a swampy color. And what you are seeing here is one of my sleeves. So the Carbeth sweater is knit bottom up. And to attack this plan in 3 days, my plan was to knit the body up to the armholes the first day, which is what I did. And then the second day, my plan was to knit the sleeves, which I did. And then the third day, my plan was to finish the sweater, which I didn't. So I joined the sleeves to the body, and I continued knitting, and I continued knitting, and I continued knitting. And the top of the Carbeth, the kind of the finish to the Carbeth, is that it has a really gorgeous, like a big kind of rolled ribbed neck. And the pattern, the way it is formed, it has kind of a wide neck, so it really needs that tall ribbed neck to kind of pull it in at the shoulders and to have it sit right. And it is also just a really heavy, cozy sweater. And if you knit the tall neck, then you don't need to knit an extra cowl or shawl or something to wear over it. So I knit, and I got to the part where I was just about ready to start the turtleneck, the roll neck up at the top, the ribbing, and I realized that I did not have enough yarn to complete the pattern as written. So the reason I did not finish is because I ran out of yarn, not because I ran out of time, because I would have been able to finish had I had enough yarn. But what I have left are, and I knit this because Malabrigo is kettle dyed, so, and it does not have dye lots, but I will say that there are variations between batches. They don't mark it with dye lots, but different skeins, even of the same colorway, can look different over time. I alternated skeins. I'm just kind of trying to get my untangling done here. I alternated skeins throughout the project. So when I finished, or when I realized I wasn't going to have quite enough yarn, I had 2 skeins going at the time, and I was up sort of towards the top. I'm getting there, I think, except that I'm twisting and one just fell on the floor, but you'll listen to me vamp for just a moment longer. So I had 2 skeins that I right up at the top at the neck, and I realized that I did not have enough to finish. So let me pull that one. Whoop, fell under the camera. Excuse me. So this is what I had left when I stopped knitting, and I chose, originally I was just going to knit until I ran out of yarn and see how far I got. Eventually I decided to stop when I had this much yarn left because I had to order an additional skein to be able to finish this as written. And I decided that just in case the skein was very different, I would want to layer it in with the skeins that I already had so that it would not be quite as obvious. And so I decided I would just probably end up going back and ripping it later, so I decided just not to even start there. So, what I have for you is an almost finished Carbeth. It is missing 2 things. So, Carbeth is a bulky sweater. It is slightly cropped, and then it has a really interesting neckline where you kind of it has an interesting version of raglan seaming that sort of comes to a point in the middle. So as you will see, I have knit my sweater sleeves. I have my body knit. While there are some ends dangling anywhere that I am finished with the knitting and the seaming, everything is woven in. So I would say about half my ends are woven in, about half of them are not yet. And this is what I have so far. I tried it on last night. It fits beautifully. And I am really, really excited to have this as part of my wardrobe. However, now I have to wait for the skein to finish it. The only other piece that is not complete that I probably will complete tonight is that you join the sleeves and the body, and so I have not grafted the underarms yet, but that's pretty easy. It's just a few stitches on each side, and I have left some tails so that I can do that and weave in my ends well. So, like I said, I did not quite make a sweater in 3 days. I would have had I not run out of yarn, because I ran out of yarn at about 7 o'clock last night. And so I would have easily knit the rows for the collar had I had them, and then just grafted the sleeve, the underarms together and gone on my merry way. So, almost knit a bulky weight sweater in the weekend. I will say that this sweater kind of ate yardage, and I'm not really sure. I'm sort of sure how I did it, but not quite sure how I did it. I did add just a very little bit to the body. I added an extra 1.5 inches to the body because I was afraid that it would be too short, because it only calls for approximately 8 inches of length under the underarm. I kind of forgot with the way that it's structured that you get more in the yoke, and that kind of helps with that. So now it's a little bit longer than I intended, but that's okay. But I had far more yardage than I think I had when I knit my last one, and somehow I still ran out, although I seem to remember maybe running out on the last one too, and maybe I didn't put that final skein in my notes. So, Carbeth by Kate Davies, knit in Malabrigo Mecha, not quite done, will be done by the next time I see you, providing that the US mail service cooperates. I ordered my extra skein from Eat Sleep Knit, who I love, yesterday, so my assumption is it will go in the mail today, because Eat Sleep Knit is very, very prompt about shipping things. The US Postal Service may or may not be prompt. I'm hoping that I will have the skein by the end of the week, so that I can finish this coming weekend and be ready to go, and not a moment too soon, because it's in the 20s outside, so who doesn't need a gorgeous bulky weight sweater? So that is what I have been working on, and the other project that I wanted to share with you. Also interesting, I don't think it's super obvious in real life, but on the camera you can see that this one kind of striped. I did alternate skeins through the entire sweater. I just wound up 2 at a time and used them together, and this one did not stripe quite the same way. So, excited about this one, and we'll have more to show you next week. So that is what has been on my needles, and a little bit of what will still be on my needles this coming week. However, I have to wait on the sweater, and other than the sock, my needles are empty. So let's talk about what I am going to cast on next. This week I'm going to start another project for Zen Yarn Garden, and I am going to show you the 2 colors that I'm going to use, and I didn't bring the pattern name with me, so I will talk about it next week. I am going to knit a 2-color cowl and hat. The patterns are sold together. It is a pattern by, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to butcher her name. I do, because I really honestly don't remember. No, I really don't. I will add it to the project notes, so please, if you are interested, check out thecornerofknitandtea.com. The most recent episode will have the pattern link, and I will discuss it in my next podcast. But I am using 2 colors. I am using the Serenity worsted base again. This is 75% superwash merino, 15% cashmere, 10% nylon in the natural colorway, and I am pairing it with another skein of the Nightshade worsted, and this is 100% superfine superwash merino in the colorway Red Maple. So it is a deep dark red, and then it is also the marled base that has the black. So that's going to be a really stunning contrast. I will say that the designer is a member of the U.S. tribal nations, and the pattern features motifs that are part of Native American designs. So it's a really, really beautiful cowl, and then there's also a tam that accompanies it, and so hopefully I'm going to crank out the cowl this week and maybe the tam next week. I will need to sort of wind and swatch tonight, and that's a project that I'm going to be casting on this week. So you'll see that over the next week or two. Since they are in worsted weight, I expect they're going to knit very quickly, and I'm going to try and get them done so that I can get them to the photographer and we can get those project kits out so you can buy them. Again, that is going to be a sample knit for Zen Yarn Garden. The second project I'm going to cast on this week is a sweater for my mom. While I saw my mom over Thanksgiving, I've mentioned this several times now, she asked for a sweater. We went through, I showed her Ravelry for a little bit because unfortunately I still don't know a great way to let someone who is unfamiliar with pattern designers look at a bunch of patterns and give me an idea of what it is she likes. So I did go through Ravelry, just the patterns, and sort of let her peruse a little bit on fingering. My mom lives in Southern California. She decided she wanted a fingering weight cardigan. So we browsed fingering weight cardigans, and she really liked all of Joji Locatelli's designs. So I went through and looked at the gauge of the yarn that I selected and looked at the gauge of Joji's cardigans, and it turns out that the one that actually matches best is Joji's Girls Night Out, which I actually knit for myself 2 years ago in a black. I made it a basic black cardigan, but this time I'm going to knit it for my mom, and I am knitting it for her in Alegria from Monostil, Uruguay, which is a 75% superwash merino, 25% polyamide, approximately 445 yards to 1 100-gram skein, and this is in the colorway Thistle. And I have 3 skeins of this, so it will be kind of a nice mauve-y purple. It's coming out a little bit bluer on screen. It definitely is a little bit pinker to me, and I think it's going to be really, really nice. It's definitely in her. She very much likes berry tones, and I think it will be a really nice cardigan for her to wear most of the seasons of the year because California is fairly mild. So her birthday comes up in early March, so I need to get a move on. So my plan is to swatch with this tonight so that I can cast that on this week as well. So my Christmas socks, this one and the 2-color cowl and hat pattern, those are going to be my knits for this coming week. As on my radar, and I really, really want to cast on, and I'm going to try and make myself do something more productive until then, but I'm still going to end up raiding my stash and casting on, and under the category of completely frivolous. I saw the pattern from her Instagram name is Notorious She, but her actual name is Sheila Toy Stromberg. She just released a pattern for leggings. And I remember back in the day, and this is like 10, 12 years ago, the pattern that always got mentioned as a joke on Ravelry is a koigu pattern or a pattern using koigu that was for leggings. And I remember thinking that I would never knit myself leggings because where would I wear them? And so even as much as, 2 or 3 years ago, I probably would not have thought about it because I would not have worn them to work. They're a little busy for work. However, now we go nowhere and we do nothing. And I can't think of anything more cozy than knitting myself a pair of leggings. So these are kind of on my want to knit dream knitting list, and they can be done in any weight yarn, although I suspect I will do them in fingering weight. And what I haven't decided is whether I'm going to do them from scraps or whether I'm going to pull, I don't have a ton of scraps because I do tend to use my scraps. I might actually just go through my stash and pull out 4 or 5 skeins of yarn that I think might go okay together and make myself kind of a bright set of leggings. Or I did sign up for a yarn advent calendar. I didn't post about it during the month because I wasn't, I didn't want to spoil it for anyone, and then I also wasn't sure how I felt about all the colors together, and because it was also a mystery, and I signed up, well, let me be more specific. I signed up for the Indie Untangled advent calendar, which was actually 31 days, not 31 skeins. I think there are 27 skeins, and then there were a few other things on other days. And it was based on, Indie Untangled has been basing a lot of their dye and spin-alongs, or dye and knit-alongs on national parks, the national parks in the United States. And so the theme was the national parks in winter. And they gathered together 27 different dyers and a whole bunch of different park photos, and every dyer did a mini skein for the holiday based on certain photos. And I think they assigned every park like 3 dyers so that you'd have like 3 skeins from that park photo. And so it was interesting because what I thought I was going to get was it was a lot of snow on a lot of like orangey red mountains, on green trees, a lot of nature. And so what I thought I was going to get was a lot of kind of earth colors, greens and oranges and whites and some of those kinds of things. And what I got actually was slightly different. I did get some of those, but then I also got, quite a bit of like sunset colors, purples and pinks and navy blues, like shadows at twilight. And so the group, since it was not all dyed by one dyer, the set is not, it's not as congruous as I might like. So for instance, I had originally thought that I would make like one big project with all of them. And I'm not sure that it flows well through the project because in general, a lot of dyers who do advent calendars design their advent with all 24 skeins in mind. And so they all kind of go together and they're potentially intended to go in a specific order. Whereas on this, it was different groups of dyers with different parks. And so it just wasn't as cohesive as I thought it might be. That said, it is enough yardage to do something like a crazy pair of leggings. So maybe what I want to do is a crazy pair of leggings and I can rearrange the colorways as I see fit and maybe even toss the stash for one single skein that would be great as like the hem and the bottom ribbing. So that's percolating in my brain and you'll probably see that coming soon, even though it's a little crazy. Okay, so sip of coffee. I've been talking a long time. This is a long podcast. I had a lot to share. Okay, last couple things. Spinning. I finished a spin. Finally. Ha ha! This is Botany by Hello Yarn. It was a club colorway a while ago, and it is on a squishy, fluffy Rambouillet, and I finished it. It is very much a fall-toned colorway. It has oranges and yellows and some white and gray and a little bit of burgundy, and it is lovely and squishy. It would be fabulous for socks, or it would be kind of fun as knitted winter accessories. It is approximately 350 yards, so probably a sport weight or like a very, very heavy fingering weight, and it is approximately 4.1 ounces, and by the time you see this, it should be up in the shop. It is washed, it had its bath. I took all the glamour photos and it should be in the shop now. So if you are interested, that is what is going on with that one. I am working on another spin. I did not finish this spin this week. I finished half the singles and I'm working on the other half the singles. This is a gorgeous braid. It actually was dyed as part of the Indie Untangled look at the parks, and this was by Apothecary Fibers, and it is called Luminaria, and it is oranges and pinks and then lots of teals, and it's got a little bit of purple in it as the colors overlap. I finished the first bobbin, and what I did is I basically divided the fiber in half end to end, and I spun each end, each section separately, and I'm going to chain ply. So I don't know that there is going to be enough yardage for socks here, but I do think there would be enough yardage for a pair of matching mitts or fingerless mittens or fingerless mitts. And so I am going to aim for 2 skeins of approximately the same weight and length. And so this is the first half. I will chain ply this one later this week, and I am working on the second half of the singles now. I'm about probably about a third of the way done with the singles, so I probably will finish those up and then ply this, and I should have this one ready to share with you next week. I love, love, love the contrast in these colors. They're going to make some gorgeous striping, and the stripes should be roughly even between the two, because I did line up all the color variations so that they would be just right. So that's what I'm working on there. I selected another braid. I do not know that I will get to it this week, but I did select another braid to share with you. This is called Branch and Root. It is from September 2021, the Fiber Club from Hello Yarn, and it is a South American wool top. It is blues and greens and yellows and browns. It is a very kind of earthy tone. And I can think of trees and branches and roots and maybe just an ever so slight bit of buds on the trees with that little bit of pink. I think this is going to spin up really nicely. It'll be a nice muted tone because there's quite a bit of darks in it and just a few lights. And this will also be destined for the shop. So keep an eye out because there will be things coming to the shop. I have a bunch of braids that I am eager to get spinning. And I hope to also use my hand spun more this year. So I'm going to call it quits there because I think I have held you for long enough. Thank you for joining me. I hope that you are kicking off the new year and that you have some bright things ahead for you. I know that 2022 was dark, I know that 2021 was dark. I know that 2022 still is quite a bit of uncertainty. We just have to take these things as it comes. And hopefully practice resilience even when we don't want to. And I can tell you that last night I was full of temper tantrum spirit about not wanting to start another week and another year and the cycle all over again. That said, I'm excited about my crafting. I'm excited to spend time with you. And I hope that you can find a little bit of that excitement in your life. So I will say, as I always do, and until I can see you again, happy knitting, happy spinning, happy sipping, and I'll see you next week. Bye.